Hello, my name is Mohamed Bonani. In this training, I will show you a few functionalities of Microsoft Excel that I hope you will find useful. So let's go ahead and start with the objective of this training. So the objective of this training is to help you leverage powerful yet simple features of Excel that will help you become more productive at the office. So let's take a look at the outline of today. So first, I will start by showing you a few features that will help you save time. So we will start with macros. So I will show you how to create a macro for the purpose of task automation. Then I will show you how to compare data side by side, which is pretty straightforward. And then I will show you how to add subtotals automatically. That feature can come in very handy. Then I will show you a powerful tool that will help you organize and analyze data, which is a pivot table. So I will show you how to create a pivot table. Now let's go ahead and dive into our first topic, macros. Basically put, a macro allows you to record repetitive tasks. So instead of having to do these tasks that are repetitive every day, for example, you only have to record these repetitive tasks once. We can call them tasks, we can call them commands. You record them once in a macro, and then since they're exactly the same tasks, you can click on the macro and Excel will perform those same tasks. So let me show you an example. Here I have a set of data, and as you see here, these are raw data. So I have here first name, last name, phone number, email address, and some numbers. So let's say that I receive those raw data every day, and I need to organize this data into first name, last name, phone number, email address, number of projects, total amount owing, amounts collected to date, and I need also to do some calculation. And I receive the same data every day, and I need to perform these same tasks every day. So that's perfect because I can use and record a macro and then launch that macro every time I need to organize this data. The first step in recording a macro is to click on the developer menu at the top. And on the left-hand corner, I have an area dedicated to macros. And at the top here, you will see the icon for recording a macro. Okay, so let's go ahead and click on it. Now, before I start the recording, I need to give my macro a name. So I can call it macro 1. Okay, so I will store the macro in this workbook and I will give it a description. I will say organize raw data. Now, as soon as I click OK, I will start recording the macro. So all the actions that I will be performing at that point will be recorded until I press again stop recording. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on OK. So now you see up here stop recording. So everything that I'm doing now is being recorded. So let's go ahead and start with the first step. So you see here in my raw data, I have first name, last name, phone number, etc. So what I would like to do is organize this data. So I would like to place the first names in the first name column, the last name in the last name, the phone number in the phone number column, etc., etc. So all I need to do is click on data, So after I click on the data menu, I will click on text to column option. So data, then text to columns option. So once I click on the text to column option, I will choose delimited. So here the system is asking me choose the file type that best describes your data. So I can choose delimited. Then I will click next. So now I will choose the type of delimiters. So for example, I can choose tab. In my case, and you will notice that there is a preview here. So I will choose comma. You see that the Excel is starting to separate my data, starting to organize my data, but I will choose also space so that it separates also the first names and the last names. Okay, so when I look at the data preview, it looks good. I will click on next. And here, Excel is asking me, well, what is the destination? So I will click on the arrow that points upward. And I will click on this first cell, right below first name. I will press on enter. Then I will click on finish. And you see now all my first names are under the first name column, last name under the last name column, phone number, email address, etc., etc. So it looks much better now. And remember, my macro is recording every single action or command that I'm performing. Okay, so I'm not done yet. Okay, so now I would like to complete these three fields. So the amount received, the total amount, which this is missing an N here, the total amount owed, and the amount remaining. So the amount received is the sum of the amount collected to date. So I will add the formula here. And press enter. The total amount owed, I will add the formula here again, is the total of the amounts owing. And the amount remaining is the difference. So equal total amount owed minus total amount received. So if I'm happy with my macro, I can go ahead and stop the recording now. So I will go back to the developer menu and click on stop recording. So now that I'm done with recording my macro is ready to be used. So let's say the next day I receive a data set that is very similar to the one that I received last week or yesterday. Okay? And I need to perform the same repetitive tasks. But now I don't have to because I recorded my macro. So now all I have to do is click on the macro menu at the top here. We're still under the developer menu. So I click on the macro option here, and I will go ahead and run my macro. Remember, the name of my macro is macro 1. So I will run my macro, and you see my macro performed all the repetitive tasks, and the macro performed them instantly. So it saved me a lot of time. So that's how you record a macro. It's very simple, it's very useful, and I encourage you to give it a try and to integrate macros in your everyday use of Microsoft Excel. So now that I'm done with my macro recording, I'm ready to save my spreadsheet. So let's go ahead and save this spreadsheet. So I will go under the File menu. I will click on Save As. And up here, make sure you do not save it as a .xlsx, so just a regular Excel workbook. It has to be saved under this format, Excel macro enable workbook.xlsm, just because it has macro enabled. So I will choose that option. I will click Save. So in this case, I will just replace my file. And now I'm done recording my macro and I saved my spreadsheet properly. So let's say, for example, I would like to compare the data from 2019 to the data of 2020. So I can go back and forth, but it would be just easier if I could have them side by side so that I can easily compare them. So in order to do that, I will click on the View menu at the top. Then I will click on New Window. So now actually I have two windows. So the next step is to go back to the View menu and click on Arrange All vertically. So the system is asking you how you would like to arrange them. So I will choose vertically and click OK. And now I'll make sure that I have 2019 to the left and 2020 to the right. So now I can compare the left-hand side with the right-hand side. So let me zoom in here a little bit. Okay, perfect. So now I can compare the left-hand side, which is 2019, to the right-hand side, which is 2020. So I can go ahead and scroll down. The only problem that when I scroll down, so let's say I have a lot of data and I needed to scroll down. The only problem is that when I scroll down, they do not scroll down together. So I need to synchronize the scrolling to make it easier to compare 2019 and 2020. In order to synchronize the scrolling, all I need to do is go back under the View menu, click on an option here called View Side by Side. Once I click on that option, the icon right below it becomes available. And the icon right below it is called synchronous scrolling. And that's what I'm looking for. So you will see once I click on that icon, I will be able to scroll down at the same time for both years. They go up together. If I scroll down, they scroll down together. Now, if I no longer wish for the two windows to be synchronized, all I need to do is click again on the same command, synchronous scrolling. And let's go ahead and test it. So if I scroll down, I'm just scrolling down for year 2019. Same thing for 2020. Okay, so now let's move on to our next topic, which is how to add subtotals automatically. So again, we can always add subtotals manually using formulas, but what I'm trying to show you is a better way and more efficient way to automate this task. Okay, so I have in front of me a data set in a table. So I have here my Giphy codes, the description, the dates, and the amounts for each account. So the first step is for me to sort these accounts. So I will need to right click on the description cell and come down to sort, and I will be sorting alphabetically from A to Z. So basically what I'm trying to do here is group the accounts together. So let's go ahead and click on sort A to Z, and you see that my accounts have been sorted alphabetically. Now, the next step is to click on the data menu. Then I will choose completely to the right the icon called subtotal. However, I have a problem here. The subtotal icon is grayed out. And there is a reason why the subtotal icon is grayed out. Because simply put, the table format does not allow for that icon to be available. It has to be in a range format, not a table format. So in order to convert my table into a range, all I need to do is click anywhere on any cell in the table. So I will right click on any cell, and under table I will choose convert to range. And once I click on convert to range, the system is asking me, do you want to convert the table to a normal range? I will say yes. And you see, if I move to the right, completely to the right of my ribbon, I can see that subtotal, or the subtotal icon, became available to use. So we'll click on the subtotal icon. So the system is asking me, at what type of information would you like me to place a subtotal? So here, if I click on the drop-down menu, I will say, well, when the description changes, add a subtotal. Well, the system is asking me, okay, well, are you looking for sum, a count, an average, a max, a min? I'm looking for a sum. Now Excel is asking me, where would you like to add the subtotal to? I will leave it as is because I would like the subtotal to be added in the amount column. You can leave the default options as is down here and click OK. So you will see that once I click OK, Excel will automatically add subtotals to my group of Giphy accounts. So let's click on OK. And you see here, under each of these groups, I have a subtotal. And at the bottom, I have the grand total. So that's how we add subtotals automatically through Excel. Now, if I wish to undo the subtotals, if I no longer wish to keep the subtotals, all I need to do is click again on subtotal and choose remove all. So let's click on remove all, and the system removed all my subtotals, including my grand total. Now, this is a topic that I very much enjoy, and the purpose of a pivot table is really to allow you to quickly slice and organize information in a way that helps you better analyze and interpret your data. So the reason I enjoy it is because you can quickly move information around. It is very dynamic. So I will keep it simple with 2 examples that I hope will give you a good idea of what pivot tables are, what they can do, and how you can use them. So let's go ahead and start creating our first pivot table. So the first step here again is to select all the cells within my data set. So because I have a large data set, what I'm going to do is click anywhere, and then I will select or press on Control A. All the cells within my data set are selected now. So the next step is click on Insert. So the Insert menu at the top, and click on Pivot Table. So once I click on OK, the system is asking me where to place my pivot table. So I'll click OK, and what happens is that you see at the bottom here, I have my pivot table. So that's my data set. And to the left, Excel has created a new worksheet. So now we are ready to start creating our pivot table. So what you see here on the left, now you don't see it yet because we have not started creating it yet, but what you will see is the pivot table starting to build up step by step. And on the right hand side, this area is dedicated to defining the parameters of the pivot table. So you see at the top, this is a list of my headers that come from my data set. So basically what I will be doing is dragging those headers, which by the way we will start calling fields, and dragging them down to one of these 4 boxes: filters, columns, rows, and values. So every time I drag one of my field from the top to one of my 4 boxes, I'm building my pivot table step by step. And this is why it's called dynamic, because you are building it step by step. Okay, so let's go ahead and start building our pivot table. And as I am building it, you will understand what filter, column, rows, and values mean. So, like I said, the data that I'm getting comes directly from this data set. Okay, so let me go back to my pivot table, or what I like to call here my field configuration tool. And so let's say that I would like to find out how many tax return has my accountant filed. So if you go back to the data set, it has to do with an accountant who has been filing tax returns. So let's go back to my pivot table, and like I said, I would like to know first how many tax returns have been filed by my accountant. So the first step is to find my field. So here I will click on number of tax return, and I will drag it to the values box. And what happens is automatically Excel provides me with the total. So now I know that my accountant has filed 64 returns in total. Now I want to know more. So now I would like to know, or I would like to have an idea of the breakdown of the types of tax returns. Basically, I would like to know how many T1s, how many T2s, how many T3s, etc. So in order to do that, I will go back to my fields and I will find the field called tax return type, and I will drag it to the row box. And as soon as I do, the system provides me with a pivot table, and that pivot table provides me with a breakdown of the type of tax returns that my accountant has filed, in addition to the total. So here I can see that my accountant has filed 52 T1 tax returns, 8 T2 tax returns, and only 4 T3 tax returns, for a total of 64 tax returns. But I want to know more now. Not only do I want to know how many tax returns, the breakdown of the types of tax returns, but also the number of tax returns per region. So for example, how many T1 tax returns did my accountant file in Ontario? How many T2 tax returns did my accountant file in Quebec? And to do that, what I will do is find the region field and drag it down to the row box. And you see now I have a breakdown of the number of tax returns, of the types of tax returns per region. I can also change the label up here. I don't like the header row labels. Let me change it, and I will substitute it by tax return types per region. Okay. Now you see that once I clicked outside of my pivot table, my field configuration tool was lost. But that's okay, because all you need to do is click on any cell in your pivot table, and this will bring back the field configuration tool. By the way, I call it the field configuration tool, but that's not necessarily the name that is being used. It only says here pivot table fields, but I like this name, field configuration tool. What I can do as well is, instead of having a region in the row box, I can place the region in the filter box. So look at what will happen when I do this. So the region is now a filter. So if I click on region and click on select multiple items, what happened is I can choose now only to see the number of tax returns, the type of tax returns, only for BC and Nova Scotia. So I will go ahead and uncheck to the left of Ontario, to the left of Quebec, and to the left of Alberta, so that I leave only BC and Nova Scotia. So I will click OK, and now I have only the results for BC and Nova Scotia. I can go back and add another province. So let's say I would like to add Alberta. So I will select Alberta, click OK, and it will add Alberta. So let's say I wish now to reset my pivot table. All I need to do is go back to my field configuration tool and drag my fields back to the list of fields. And this way, I'm resetting all my parameters. So now I went back to a blank spreadsheet. Let's try with a second example. So let's say that my accountant would like to know how much money he received from his business of filing tax returns. So the first step is to find the right field, which is paid amount. And I will drag it to the values box. The values box is, generally speaking, the box that we start with, and that's usually where we would include the sum, the average, etc. So now I can see that my accountant received a total of $22,250 in exchange of the tax returns that he has filed for his clients. Now, what I would like to know is, when did my accountant receive his payments? So in order to receive an answer to my question, I will go back to my fields and I will drag the field called month of payment down to the row box. By the way, I can use row or I can use column. It's really up to you what you prefer. Visually speaking, I prefer to use rows, but for the sake of the second example, let's use columns. So now I have a breakdown of the sum received by my accountant for the month of November, for the month of October, and for the month of December. So of October, 10,900, November 6750, December 4600. So clearly October is the month where my accountant receives most of his payments. But again, I want to know more. Now what I would like to know is, from what region does my accountant receive most of his payments? So I will go back to my list of fields. I will find the region field and I will drag it down to the row box. So now I have a breakdown of the paid amount per month, but also per region. I can also sort the grand total in an ascending order. So all I need to do is right click on the cell below grand total, click on sort, and choose sort largest to smallest. So once I click on it, I can see that in Alberta, my client receives $4,800, and from his clients from BC, he receives $3,000, and from his clients from Nova Scotia, he receives $2,700. You can see on the right hand side, next to region, I see the filter symbol. So when I reset my pivot table earlier, I did not reset the filtering. And this is why when you look here, I only have Alberta, British Columbia, and Nova Scotia. So if I open the filter, I can find Ontario and Quebec unchecked, check Ontario and Quebec, click OK, and they will appear again. So in a nutshell, that's what a pivot table is. Now, what you can do as well is, if we go back to our data set, you can go back and click on Insert, Recommended Pivot Tables, and instead of creating your own, Excel provides you with a few suggestions of pivot tables. So let me double click on it, and the pivot table will appear in a different worksheet. Now, those pivot tables that are suggested are pretty good, but I personally prefer to create my own. It is very simple to create, and when you know exactly the information that you're looking for, I personally recommend to create your own pivot table. This concludes our training. I would like to thank you for your attention, and I wish you a wonderful day.